Verdict. We, the jury, finds as follows as to the defendant in this case. The defendant is guilty of manslaughter, a lesser included offense.
The Black Swan, Nicolae Benefield, guilty of manslaughter. We're replaying for you the late-night verdict if you missed it. And the family of Doug Benefield is reacting this morning. His cousin Tommy joins us live, and his daughter Eva spoke to Court TV as well, following the very emotional day in court. Also this hour, we're getting you ready for the sentencing in the Apple River Stabbing trial. Plus, a cage and a dumpster. Two true crime stories where parents of young children allegedly do the unspeakable. It's all coming up next for you, plus much more right here on Opening Statements. Good Wednesday morning to you, my friends. Welcome to Opening Statements. I'm your host, Julie Grant. If you're new to the program, welcome. We're so glad you're here. I say it's kind of like coffee and court. It's morning time. We get all warmed up and ready to go together for the big day ahead on Court TV Live. And if you were up late last night, you heard the big news, and that is what my opening statement is all about. Justice came late, but it did come in the case of the Black Swan, Nicolae Benefield. The jury delivered their verdict around 10 o'clock last night, deciding that Nicolae Benefield was guilty of the crime of manslaughter. They found her not guilty of the crime of second-degree murder. Now, Doug Benefield's daughter, Eva, was understandably very emotional as that verdict was read. And when she spoke to the media after the verdict, Eva started by apologizing to real domestic abuse victims. Nicolae Benefield's dramatic performance was probably very triggering and very insulting to countless DV survivors. So let's remember the real victim in all of this. Let's remember Doug Benefield. Whatever we've come to learn about him, we now know that he was not trying to kill the mother of his baby. That's my opening statement, and now I want to give you much more on this breaking top story. Because that verdict came in so late, many of us missed it live. I myself was sound asleep when it came in. So we're going to go back and watch the whole thing right now. Take a look.
Members of the jury, I understand you have a verdict, and we have a foreperson.
Yes, we do.
Ma'am, has the jury reached a verdict?
Yes, we have.
Is the verdict unanimous?
Yes, it is.
Would you please hand the verdict form to the deputy? I need to check it, make sure it's in proper form. Thank you. All right, the verdict appears to be in proper form. Madam Clerk, would you please publish the verdict?
In the Circuit Court of the 12th Judicial Circuit in Fort Manatee County, Florida, the state of Florida versus Nicolae Benefield, case number 2020 CF 3014. Verdict. We, the jury, finds as follows as to the defendant in this case. The defendant is guilty of manslaughter, a lesser included offense. Did Nicolae Benefield actually carry a firearm? Yes. Did Nicolae Benefield discharge a firearm? Yes. Did Nicolae Benefield, as a result of discharging a firearm, cause death to Douglas Benefield? Yes. So say we all this 30th day of July, 2024, at Bradenton, Manatee County, Florida. Cheryl foreperson.
Would either side like the jury polled? State?
No.
Defense?
Yes, sir.
Members of the jury, you're now going to be polled. The clerk is going to ask each of you individually if this is your verdict and the verdict of the jury as a whole. Madam Clerk.
Juror number 15, is this your verdict as well as the verdict of the jury as a whole?
Yes.
Juror number 20, is this your verdict as well as the verdict of the jury as a whole?
Yes.
Juror 21, is this your verdict as well as the verdict of the jury as a whole?
Yes.
Juror number 29, is this your verdict as well as the verdict of the jury as a whole?
Yes.
Juror number 33, is this your verdict as well as the verdict of the jury as a whole?
Yes.
And juror number 35, is this your verdict as well as the verdict of the jury as a whole?
Yes.
Thank you. Members of the jury, I want to thank you for your time and consideration in this case. I know that many of you have missed important work obligations and family obligations and other engagements that you had planned, as well as time with your families. But I want to thank you for being willing to give us your time and your attention and being observant to this entire trial and serving as jurors and doing your civic duty. I have paperwork that we're going to give you that will reflect your service as a juror, as well as a piece of paper from the clerk's office documenting that each of you has been here for these number of days if you need it for work purposes. If you need some sort of other paperwork for work or anything like that, contact my judicial assistant and we'll be able to get that for you.
We ask that the court admit Ms. Benefield to bond, continue her on the same bond, in fact. And if the court is not inclined to do so, we ask that Your Honor stay the decision so that we can appeal directly to the second district. As the court knows, it's an accelerated docket because of the nature of the motion, that is to say, the bond.
Thank you. State, did you want to be heard?
Judge, I object to any bond at this point. The potential sentence is 30 years. While this defendant may have appeared at every court hearing, she was not convicted of the charge at the time. She has much more at stake at this point, being convicted of this crime, and I would ask you to deny the bond.
Any rebuttal?
No, sir.
Ms. Benefield, the jury, having found you guilty of manslaughter with a firearm, are going to remand you to the custody of the Manatee County Sheriff. We're going to revoke your bonds where you'll be held pending sentencing.
And off she goes to jail, where she will stay until the time of her sentencing, and then she will learn her sentence for the crime she committed the day that she shot and killed her husband, Doug Benefield. With me now, a very special guest, someone who was in the courtroom, watched the verdict, testified during this trial. He was witness number one, Doug Benefield's cousin, family spokesperson, and tremendous advocate, Tommy Benefield. Tommy, good morning to you. And may I just start by giving you my condolences, just person to person. I am so sorry for your loss. So starting there, knowing now this case finally, you know, has a resolution. I mean, you've been waiting for a long time to get some answers in your cousin's death. What's your reaction to what the jury decided?
Good morning, Julian. Thank you to Court TV for allowing us to continue to present a fair and represent our family and represent Doug and Eva and Emerson. Relief is the only way I can put it. 1,401 days yesterday since Doug was killed. We're happy with the manslaughter with a firearm charge. It was very simple and unanimous. We believe the jury only struggled on reaching the second-degree murder level, but the manslaughter charge was quick.
Tommy, I'm curious, why do you think that is? Why do you think that the jury found her guilty of manslaughter but not second-degree murder?
The jury had to reconcile her story, her acting, her presentation of her attorney and herself, that they had to reconcile that with all the evidence. And there's only one person besides Ashley Benefield who was there. It's Doug Benefield, and he could never speak for himself. I believe, and we believe, that gave enough confusion that we couldn't reach the second-degree murder threshold.
Mm-hmm. You think it was her testimony that kind of tipped the scales, so to speak, and perhaps maybe swayed the jury, which would make sense. I mean, legally, when we think of manslaughter crimes, we think of heat of passion crimes, right? Maybe there was something that got somebody worked up, and there isn't that depraved mind that comes along with second degree, the lack of any regard for human life. I mean, as a lawyer and a former prosecutor, I think it was charged properly. I do, so let me be clear. But I guess I can see where the jury found less moral culpability with the manslaughter, perhaps for the reason you stated, because of what she demonstrated in the courtroom. Tommy, I know that there was a lag from the time that your cousin Doug was killed and the time that Ashley was charged. At any point before she was charged, did she ever reach out to you and give any kind of apologize, or to Eva or anyone in the family about what happened, or try to offer any explanation as to why this occurred?
Not only did she not reach out to Eva or the family, what you saw when the jury verdict was read by the clerk, you never saw any emotion out of her face, even though she's facing 30 years as a maximum in this. She's never reached out. We just think it's a ridiculous story that she would never talk with her mother about it, never talk with her counselor, former counselor about it, never speak to anyone about it. That's clearly not a self-defense justifiable case.
Right, Tommy. I find the behavior bizarre, very selfish, self-serving. The testimony was very self-serving, and it didn't paint Doug in a good light. And I want to give you an opportunity to speak to that, because we're hearing everything from her mouth, and certainly it should be taken with a grain of salt, because she had everything to gain by saying certain things. Would you kind of shed some light on who Doug is, and any explanations you may have for some of the bad behavior that was even acknowledged by his daughter, Eva?
Well, like everyone knows, just like Doug himself acknowledged the mistakes he made when they were in that terrible household home situation with Ashley being brought into Eva and Doug's home, Sydney, the other girl that was brought in that Ashley and Doug rescued and took guardianship of, and they put all those people in a room together, in a home together. And Doug admitted what he did, and he was always, always ashamed of what he did. But you see the pictures there. Doug followed me in the Navy. He served this country for 20 years, only 10 of which we know about openly in the Navy. He served as a tech ops person. He did incredible, incredible things for first responders, for special operations, solving communications problems that no one else could do but him. The patents, he cared for that dog. This was not Ashley and Doug's dog. That dog, Sully, was amazing. You see the picture of Sully right by his side. He admitted the one time, and he admitted what happened that day. But for 3 years and 9 days after that, people can change. Even the expert witnesses they brought on are in the business of helping people change from things that have happened. You see Doug's picture with Emerson in the back seat. In Doug's computer, which I have at home, 40,000 photographs, 10,000 of which are he and Emerson and Ashley all together. He never gave up on Ashley. He believed it was his mission to help her recover. He had recovered through his traumas in his relationship with Renee, Eva's mother. This is a man that was kind and caring, not outgoing at all. He would never be the center of attention in any room, in any business meeting. He was never the center of attention in the ballet that he founded for Ashley, that he put all his future income into that ballet. He was a serving servant leader, caring, never the way that they portrayed him in any shape or form.
Tommy, thank you for all of that. I'm curious, do you think that she was using your cousin for the ballet company, for his money, for a baby that she wanted so much? Was she using him?
always. And she manipulated him. We know from his computer and from searches that she was researching him before the first day that they met at the political meeting. She contacted him for the 10 days after that first meeting before he flew her to Charleston. I don't know, 1,000 messages on WhatsApp between the two of them because Doug was in Israel solving technical issues for communications for our first responders, our special operators. That's who he was, and he was a solving guy, and she manipulated him all the way through. She always told him, I spoke to him the day before the killing, so did his business partners on separate calls. They picked up the U-Haul, they were moving to Maryland, and Ashley told the U-Haul manager, we're putting our family back together, moving in. He always believed there was hope for reconciling, and you heard from every witness that she hid that from him intentionally.
Tommy, this is really, really illuminating what you're sharing there, that she had her eyes on him before he even knew who she was. She had set her sights on your cousin, Doug. Tommy, before we let you go, we're just about out of time, but briefly, what are you hoping for once the sentencing date is set? What is your hope for what's next for Ashley?
Well, the fortunate thing is it's manslaughter in the first degree with a firearm. I mean, we're very, very knowledgeable about this. We spent a lot of time with the prosecutors. We, of course, met with the prosecutors last night and just thanked them. Eva just thanked them for justice for her father. 30 years is the maximum. The second degree murder charge was 25 to life. So we're going to ask for 30. If it turns out to be 25, we're very, very comfortable with that. She and her mother are 25 years apart in age. That's a long time. Her choices, if it is, let's say 25 years, her daughter Emerson's going to be 31 years old when she comes out, basically almost the same age as Ashley now. That's the choice that Ashley made that day to kill Doug and pretend it was in self-defense. She cost Eva, she cost our family, she cost her own daughter with Doug, a life with both parents, and it didn't have to be that way.
You're exactly right, Tommy. Her problems certainly bear her fingerprints. Again, we're so sorry for the loss of your cousin, Doug, and you're doing a beautiful job keeping his memory alive and alive in the right way with all the beautiful things that you shared with us. Thank you so much. Tommy Benefield, please come back again soon,
Julie.
okay? Take good care. And we're going to be talking more about the Black Swan case later this hour. We're going to hear from Doug's daughter, Eva. As Tommy mentioned, she spoke to us. We've got that interview for you coming up. And we're talking about the sentences that are possible for Ashley Benefield under Florida law. You heard Tommy just touch on it a little bit. We're going to bring in our legal experts to see what is likely. When we come back after the break, we're going to talk about two trending stories where we have parents allegedly putting their children's lives in tremendous jeopardy.
He was filthy. He's not potty trained, had stuff all over him. I can think back a couple cases were maybe this bad or worse, but this was pretty bad.
Tonight on Court TV.
These are the big cases that everyone is talking about.
A lot of new developments taking place.
Shocking.
I know who killed John Bonet.
To say the least.
You cannot make this stuff up.
It's unreal. The scene of the double murders is behind us right here. Things are happening. The investigation is continuing.
Closing arguments with Vinnie Politan. Tonight at 8, 7 Central. Only on Court TV.
Now for what's trending in true crime, a shocking video shows the moment that first responders pulled a newborn baby from a dumpster in Houston last week. The video, first seen on ABC 13 News, shows emergency medical services digging through a pile of trash and finding the newborn. A bystander reported hearing a baby crying in the dumpster and then called for help. Everilda Cook-Salam, the teen mother of the baby, was taken into custody days later on one count of felony abandoning a child without the intent to return. Prosecutors say the 18-year-old told investigators she left the baby because she didn't want her boyfriend to break up with her. She's currently being held on a bond of $200,000. And this morning, we're asking our question to our power panel about how prosecutors should treat the teenage mom. Let's bring in our guests. With me, professor and retired NYPD detective Mike Alcazar, trial attorney and former prosecutor Randolph Rice, and criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Franz Borchardt. Great to have you all on this story. Franz, let me begin with you, please. Tapping into your experience as a former prosecutor, how should this case be handled?
So on the one hand, you have an 18-year-old doing something cruel, stupid, immature, and on the other hand, you have an 18-year-old doing something stupid, cruel, and immature. So, you know, look, this young lady's not going to spend the rest of her life in jail, but I definitely think she needs to spend a significant amount of time in jail. What's difficult about this for me is her age and her decision-making may give her a little bit of wiggle room for mitigation, but not a whole lot in my mind.
Agree, Franz. Thank you for that. Randolph Rice, you were a prosecutor as well. Talk to us here, please. Your thoughts.
Yeah, I think that this is similar to a case that we saw out of New Mexico last year where a mother did the same exact thing and recently received 18 years in prison. I think that that's probably something that the prosecutors in Harris County, Texas are probably going to be looking at. I went back and actually looked at the law too. It looks like they're probably going to be able to step up the penalties because of the fact that she left this baby in a dumpster, which is a dangerous place. They're probably going to up this to a second-degree felony, which carries a maximum of 20 years, which I have no doubt that the prosecutors are going to look for as much time as they can get. But as indicated before, it's something they're going to look at also, what were the mental health conditions? That's going to be a mitigating factor.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up, Randolph. I know this is something Court TV has not independently confirmed, but the Houston Chronicle is reporting that this teen mom did have some undisclosed mental disability. We don't know the nature of the disability, but I'm glad you mentioned that because that certainly could be a mitigating factor. And thankfully, the baby's alive. I mean, the best part about this is the baby's alive. So thank goodness we're not talking about a death case here, as you and Franz noted. Detective Alcazar, last but certainly not least, you've seen a lot in your years of service. When you see a happy story where you can bring a baby home safely without any harm, what a wonderful thing that is. Talk to us, please, about some of the things that you're seeing as this case goes through the court system. What are you expecting to happen for this teen mom and for the baby?
Well, they're going to find placement for the child. They're going to interview the perpetrator and look at her history. Like your other guest said, that perhaps she was a victim of domestic violence. Maybe there was a fear, a proper fear why she did this. I'm not justifying it, but there must be something in her history why she's so afraid to bring the baby home. She is misguided. She is a child. I have responded to worse scenarios than this where the baby was DOA, and always seems to be young people that are misguided. So there's a lot to look at investigatively to see what brought this caused her to do these actions.
I appreciate it, Detective. It's quite a process, as you noted, the interviewing and making sure the child is going to be safe going forward. My gosh, this child gets a second chance at life. You wonder if the baby will ever learn of this. We're going to continue following this story and, of course, follow the progression of her case in Texas. In the meantime, we want to turn to Iowa, as the parents of a 4-year-old boy there are accused of keeping their son, who had developmental disabilities, in a makeshift cage. These are the parents' mugshots right there. Authorities say the boy was found wandering outside of his grandparents' home, covered in human and animal feces.
He was filthy. He's not potty trained, had stuff all over him. I can think back a couple cases where maybe this bad or worse, but this was pretty bad.
Now, according to Scripps News Omaha, one makeshift cage was found in the home. It was made out of a pack-and-play, zip ties, and a baby gate used as a roof. So our question this morning, if these parents did this, what were they thinking? Let's bring back in our power panel. I'm sure you all have a lot to say about this one. Detective Alcazar, let me start with you this time, please.
Yeah, I'm just so happy that the child was able to escape and neighbors and the police were able to recover him and discover what was going on inside the house. These parents are animals. They have no business becoming parents. They don't have the right to raise children. I'm glad they got arrested, and hopefully they serve a lot of time in prison.
Everything you just said, preach, detective. I love what you're saying there. This case is, it makes your blood boil. It really does. Randolph Rice, to you next. Your thoughts, please.
Yeah, I'm going to put my prosecutor hat on for this one and also my parent hat. As a father of 3 children, I can't imagine having a child in this situation. But I also call into question, where were the other relatives? Where were the neighbors? Where were all the other people in this family's life for 4 years that this child and the mistreatment that they'd received, and apparently there was another child in the home? Where were these other people that weren't saying something, weren't coming forward? It casts a lot of questions that I think investigators are going to have to dig deep into, and prosecutors are going to have their hands full trying to figure out who all needs to be held responsible. Certainly the parents. This is a horrible act. This is no way a child should be treated, but there may be other people here that should be looked at.
Great points, Randolph. Thank you for all that. Franz Borghardt, would you take us home, please?
So I'm completely and utterly comfortable with putting parents who put their innocent child in a human cage. I'm completely okay with putting them in human cages. And I think that's what needs to happen here. I think these guys need to go to jail, again, for a very long time. Look, parenting is not an easy business, to be sure, but it does not entitle you to basically treat your child, whether they have special needs or not, whether it's hard or not, it doesn't allow you to treat that child subhuman. And that's what we're dealing with here. And so they're going to end up in jail for an extended period of time. And I think that that's justice.
I love it, Franz. I'm with you. Eye for an eye for parents that do things like this. I'm with you. I'm sure many of our trial watchers at home are as well. We've got to leave it there right now. I'm glad you're all coming along with us. We're going to hit a break. When we return, we're looking ahead to the sentencing of defendant Nicolae Miu for the Apple River Stabbings.
He punched me in the face. I don't know what the got someone who can't move. Go help him. Please. We're going to help. We got a gentleman down there. His guts are out in the open. Okay.
What kind of a sentence is this guy going to get? What kind of factors might play into the court's decision for his penalty? Plus, we've got a guilty verdict for the Black Swan, Nicolae Benefield. We're talking about what tipped the scales for the jury to convict her of the crime of manslaughter. Welcome back. Now for our opening statement spotlight today, Court TV will be bringing you the sentencing of defendant Nicolae Miu, who you'll recall was found guilty in the Apple River Stabbings case in Wisconsin. Now this morning, we're spotlighting the potential sentence he might receive and how he ended up in this situation. So it was back in July of 2022 that Miu said that he was looking for a lost cell phone in the water when we know that he clashed with a group of tubers. Things got out of hand very quickly. And we do want to warn you, what we're about to show you is graphic. After Miu was pushed into the water, he pulled out a knife. 17-year-old Isaac Schumann was fatally stabbed. 4 others were stabbed and injured and survived. Miu claimed it was done in self-defense, but he did lie to police about whether he was carrying a knife. Now, the top count against Miu carries a sentence of up to 40 years in prison, with more time possible on the other counts. So this morning, we're wondering, what kind of a situation should the judge give him and why? Let me welcome in my guests. Retired NYPD detective and professor Mike Alcazar, and criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Franz Borghardt. You both were kind enough to give us analysis throughout this case, and I know you recall it well. This was just an awful, tragic case. A lot of trauma there on the river that day for many people. Where should the court come down with this guy and why? Assuming he's a prior record score of 0. We don't have his rap sheet. We're not able to access that being in the media. But assuming that this guy doesn't have any criminal history, Franz, would you start us off, please? What do you think would be fair for him and why?
So in cases like this, I like what we call a split sentence, where there's a little bit of jail time, and then on the back end of that, there's some supervised release time where he has what we would say time hanging over his head, to where if he commits another crime, he goes right back to jail. And I say that because, look, at the end of the day, he has probably no violent history. I think it's a safe assumption that he's probably a low criminal history score. The odds of recidivism based on the freak occurrence of what happened in the water is probably statistically low. A little bit of jail, some supervision on the back end. I think that would be fair and just. I do not think he gets maxed out. I think somewhere in the 10-ish range would be appropriate for the amount of jail time.
I really like everything you said there, Franz. A hybrid sentence where the court could keep an eye on him for a long time. We know that he is a heart patient. We know that he had had a major surgery prior to this incident. I'm wondering if that may come up as well. Detective, your thoughts on how this may go for him at sentencing and how the court may view him and what he did?
I think they might take into consideration that he carried a knife with him, you know, in a tubing area. So they might even say that there wasn't enough of a cooling off period. Like when we investigate scenes like this, where there's a dispute, a cooling off period is something necessary. And because he had the knife readily available, he took action and it took a life. So I think they'll consider that. Perhaps if he didn't have the knife, he could have just chosen to walk away and everyone would be alive and not injured. So that's something, you know, to consider. I'm sure the family wants him to consider that of his actions. So it's a difficult decision to make.
Certainly. Yeah, and I appreciate what you're saying, Detective, about going back to him having the knife that day. If he would have just been honest with police, Detective, let's say that you're one of the first detectives on this homicide scene. If he would have just been honest, do you think this could have gone differently for him?
Yeah, perhaps. If he was honest, and then maybe they would have bought the idea that it was self-defense. He was protecting himself, but because he was hiding the fact that he had the knife on him, it doesn't bode well for him.
Right. Franz, thinking back to his trial when he testified, and we all watched it, do you think that he hurt his case by getting up there and testifying?
I don't think he needed to testify. I think everything was on video. I think the defense had the right narrative. I don't know if he hurt his case. I don't think he helped his case. And the problem with him testifying is now at sentencing, he has to walk a tightrope of, well, you know, at trial you said X, Y, and Z. So if he's not contrite, if he's not apologetic, if he's inconsistent with what he said during the trial, what does the judge do with that? So don't know that it hurt him. Don't think that it helped him.
Appreciate it. Great points from you both. Franz Borghardt, Detective Mike Alcazar, thank you both so much. Franz, you're coming back for What's Tipping the Scales. Detective, we will see you soon here on Opening Statements. Thank you so much. And a reminder that sentencing is going to begin at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. We're going to monitor it for you. Have all the details right here on Court TV. Still ahead, we're talking about justice served for the Benefield family.
I apologize to all the women who have gone through domestic violence situations. I think that what Ashley was doing was unfair to them.
Eva Benefield talking about how Ashley Benefield's claims about being a victim of domestic violence set back everyone who truly is a survivor. We're going to talk about what kind of sentence the Swan should get. And you'll see Eva's interview with us coming up.
This week,
The biggest moments in the Black Swan murder trial, plus a voice for victims in the tragic story of a 6-year-old's death and a father now facing sentencing.
Opening Statements with Julie Grant. Mornings at 8, 7 Central on Court TV. Sunday, August 11th, the season finale of Accomplice to Murder.
The horrors they uncovered are horrors not even inflicted upon prisoners of war.
Accomplice to Murder with Vinnie Politan. Season finale, Sunday, August 11th, 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
Verdict. We, the jury, finds as follows as to the defendant in this case. The defendant is guilty of manslaughter, a lesser included offense.
Now for what's tipping the scales, it took jurors about 6 hours' time to reach a verdict in the Black Swan murder trial. The victim's daughter, Eva, and brother expressed relief.
I apologize to all the women who have gone through domestic violence situations. I think that what Ashley was doing was unfair to them. They deserve justice, and I'm very happy that my dad got the justice that he deserves.
I got to spend 3 days with Doug before he was shot and killed, and it was about 5 weeks before that happened. And what he was so excited about was the fact that he loved his wife, he loved his girls, and he wanted to be here for them. And he would want healing for everyone because he was a firm believer in Jesus Christ as his Lord and Savior, as am I, and there is forgiveness for sin.
That was Dave Benefield, Doug's brother. Now, we know that the jury apparently couldn't decide on the second-degree murder charge, but did agree on the manslaughter charge. No date yet set for her sentencing. What tipped the scales for the jury is the question we're asking this morning. Let's talk about it with our guests. Let me bring them back in now. Both of them former prosecutors. We have Randolph Rice and Franz Burkhardt with us now. So what do we think was the reason the jury opted for manslaughter rather than second-degree murder, which was the top count here? Randolph, your thoughts, please.
Well, I think they probably went back and looked at the evidence and determined that there was some reckless behavior on her part. But, you know, this is the great mystery of our judicial system, is we don't know what the jury is thinking. Now, oftentimes the jurors will come out and tell us how they came to this, and certainly they came out and said they couldn't reach a conclusion. The judge sent them back and said, keep working. But, you know, obviously there was a movement in that room to convict. And when they couldn't sort of agree, then they came back and said, look, let's find something lesser here to try to appease everybody in that room. And that seems to be what they did.
Mm-hmm. Right. You know, I wonder if it's because of manslaughter being a crime that has less moral culpability, if you will, than murder in the second degree, where in Florida we're talking about a depraved mind, a reckless disregard for human life, whereas with manslaughter we do have the intent to kill, but it's known as more of a heat of passion type conviction. Franz, do you think it could be that they felt that she might have been provoked in some way in the situation?
I think that that's absolutely what happened. I think that there was enough evidence to support that he was not going to win husband/partner of the year, that there was a little bit of suggestion that he was inappropriate towards her, but not enough to substantiate self-defense, battered women syndrome. And so I can imagine the conversation happening that, hey, look, you don't think it was, we don't collectively think it was self-defense, but you don't think it was the top charge. Let's compromise. And I think that's what they did, was they compromised. And that happens in jury rooms all the time. And you're absolutely right, Julie. We're not in the room where it happens. We all want to be in the room where it happens. We all want to know how the sausage gets made. Unfortunately, we're not. But the bottom line is they convicted her of a serious felony crime that carries a huge possible sentence. So she's by no means out of the woods, although as a defense attorney, it's a huge win for her. She was looking at even more time if she got convicted of the top charge.
Mm-hmm. You're right, Franz. As Tommy shared with us, 25 to life. It could have been life imprisonment for her if she was convicted of murder too. But here we have her looking at around 30 years max, according to Tommy and what the prosecution team has shared with him. I want to play for you both a couple clips from the closing arguments. Let's talk about that and how that might have swayed the jury. Let's watch one from the prosecution and then one from the defense.
Domestic violence is absolutely a real problem. There are many, many women around that are in horrendous situations. Women, and sometimes men, that are in situations where they're being abused and beaten horribly on a regular basis. People that feel like they cannot get out, they have no way to get out. That is not this defendant.
In my opening statement, I told you two things. I said that at the conclusion of the case, those were the only two things that would be established beyond the reasonable doubt. The first one was that Doug Benefield was a very sick guy. I think there's no doubt of that. The second thing was that Ashley's action on that day, September 27th, 2020, was absolutely justified.
All right, now let's talk about the advocacy. I want to know what you gentlemen think of the advocacy throughout this case. Randolph, you first, please.
This is very classic. You know, the prosecutors are going to play down the defense's arguments. They're going to say, hey, look, Doug was not an abuser. This was no basis for any type of defense. And they probably are, and obviously they were somewhat successful in that because they were able to convince that jury that they weren't going to rely on that. But the defense does the other position. They're going to say, you know, that she was a victim, that she needed to protect herself, and they're going to paint that picture and that image throughout the whole trial so that when they go in that deliberation room, that's what they're thinking. So they did their jobs. The jury just came back and found the evidence just supported the state a little bit more.
I appreciate it, Randolph. Franz, to you next, please. Your thoughts on the advocacy overall?
Advocacy was wonderful. I agree 100%. They both did their jobs. The problem that both sides runs into is the only thing we hate more than someone who abuses an innocent lamb is a wolf in sheep's clothing. And she just smelled, on all accounts, like a wolf in sheep's clothing, who makes it harder for true victims of domestic violence. There just wasn't enough there to get her past the threshold of victim. And that was the problem for the defense from day one. I think this was the right verdict ultimately. Manslaughter has an element of crime of passion. She snapped. And look, at the end of the day, you play the cards you're dealt. I think both sides did great.
I'm with you, friends. Both sides fought really hard on this one. We know that at times you could just cut the tension with a knife in that courtroom. And I think at the end of all of this, you know, you had this woman who was trying to portray herself, as the prosecutor said, as this victim of domestic violence, and the facts just did not support her story. They just didn't. I mean, courts, investigators, family members, you know, all the testimony did not show that she was that kind of victim. So the focus goes on that incident itself, and they found she did not need to shoot him in order to stay alive or to protect herself from the serious bodily injury that could have occurred, according to her. I want to share with you that we're going to have more from Eva Benefield coming up in our next hour when we get into more of what she said, but she sort of summed it up for the press when she said, I'm sorry for all of you who really are victims of domestic violence because Ashley Benefield really did everyone a disservice by trying to claim that she was. We've got to leave it there for now, but we're going to continue with our coverage of this verdict, and we're going to show you more of what Eva Benefield shared after the verdict was announced and what life might look like for her moving forward. A big thank you to our great guests, attorneys Randolph Rice and Franz Borghardt. Thank you both so much for your time and your expertise. We'll see you both soon.